Hi, I'm Amit Thakur, Managing Partner Mindshare. Welcome to MMA Talk Hub series, episode 2. And with me today is Valerie, APAC Marketing Manager for Digital Turbine. Welcome, Valerie, to MMA Talk Hub series.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks for having me on the show.
So this is your first visit to Ho Chi Minh, Valerie. We were just talking about before the shoot starts, right? How do you feel being in Ho Chi Minh?
It is my first visit in Ho Chi Minh, and I think so far, it's been pretty interesting. Like the streets, the crowds, all that. They were all very bustling all the time. So I think that's the whole vibe of the city that I'm getting.
Great. I've been here now almost 5 years, and with Mindshare Vietnam. So it's been a great journey for me as well. Let's learn more about yourself and how's been your journey with Digital Turbine. When did you join, or something before that? How did you get associated with this whole digital ecosystem?
Right. I was originally from the brand side, so looking at writing the briefs, looking at the evaluation of the campaigns and all that. And then when I moved to Digital Turbine earlier last year, it was a refreshing change because moving from a brand to the vendor, and that was really like looking at advertisement again from a completely different set of lens, looking at how everything works behind the scenes. So it has been very interesting for me so far, and enjoying every bit of it.
Awesome. And for Digital Turbine itself, why don't we discuss a little more about that and what it's about? And I got to know that you and Digital Turbine and Ad Colony also joined hands, right? Why don't you tell us more about that?
Yes, exactly. So Digital Turbine, we really work with the major stakeholders within the mobile ecosystem.
Right.
So we drive growth for telecom operators, app publishers, and also performance and brand advertisers. So in the recent years, we over a series of mergers and acquisitions, we are all under the umbrella of Digital Turbine. What the Vietnam market might be a little bit more familiar with could be our legacy brand Ad Colony, which is now one of the brands under DT as well.
You can see Digital Turbine extending their footprint and really taking this business seriously, right?
Yes.
Coming back to what we are going to discuss today, and I saw that when we were talking while before we started the shoot, you were checking certain phones while we were talking.
Yes.
And that to me is an interesting point, Valerie, because all of us go through this almost every day. We are split into multiple screens, we are split into multiple devices, and what we lack as a person in each of those devices is attention.
Yes.
Right. And what are your views on this whole point of attention? How do you think, is this an important metric, something that we should look at as brands, as advertisers?
Why we want to pay attention to attention is really because attention in the first place drives memory retention, and with that it's more likely to come with brand recall and eventually brand growth. So I think that's the start point. For a long time now, the industry have been looking at impressions and viewability as metrics of success for advertising, for ads, and how successful the campaigns are. And today, some of the discussions surrounding that is that if your ad is seen, is it truly being seen? If it's seen, is it remembered? So several factors in play, and really it's about in our everyday life. For example, when we are watching a video on whichever screen that you might be on, and then the ad comes up, but at the same time, a doorbell comes, and then you go and go to the door, and by the time you're back, the advertisement might have already passed, but that itself already counts as impression, and it is definitely going to score high on viewability because it's on the screen. But do you watch the video or the ad? No. But will you remember? I don't think so. So that really leads us to the maybe the next generation of quality metrics that we can look at, which is attention.
I think you've hit the nail, and to build onto that point, even from an agency perspective, right? There were a lot of few metrics that we used to use to gauge the impact of the message or the platform itself, right? And which ranges from view through rate to click through rate, how the consumer is engaging with the whole brand message. But I really agree with you on the fact that those days are from the past, and they may still give us a sense from a media performance, but what you just raised the point of attention, and has the consumer really watched the ad? Have they understood the message that they wanted to put on board? And that is the key question, right? And while we will discuss more about that, let's get to talk more of what the industry is feeling about this, right? And what are those technical things that we should know when we talk about attention measurement, and what different players, whether the advertiser or the agencies or the partners or tech providers such as Digital Turbine, what are we all doing towards this, right? So welcome audience, and that's the topic that we're going to discuss today. How do we measure attention and create an impact for the brand? So, what do you think are the key drivers of attention? Because we put our ads, we spend a lot of money across different platforms. So from a planning lens, we discuss and decide what platforms to choose based on how to best reach a certain set of audience, right? And we make sure that from a media lens, they are reached. And the brand owner creates that message, which we feel that is the best way to communicate the brand's or product's benefits, right? But it all boils down to the point where the consumer has seen it, like you rightly said, and if they remember it. So what are those things that we should look at?
I would say that the key drivers of attention comes down to a few. I think creativity is one, volition is one, the sound is one, the duration is one. So there are a couple of factors that drives attention and eventually help to capture it. But I think today I wanted to touch on two. The biggest one. The first one, in my opinion, that really drives attention is creativity. So whether or not your ad is creative, something out of the box that people have never thought about. I think for me, personally, myself, I would be attracted to an ad like that. Something that I've never seen before, like the QR code that went on in Super Bowl. I think that was a great example.
That's a good.
And also, I think a study that was done by Lumen and another agency also showed that creativity is actually one of the greatest push for attention as well. That really brings me to the second point, which is on volition. So as creativity as the main lever, volition, which means whether or not attention is earned or forced, is also one of the key drivers. So it's like that, right? Like maybe you're playing a mobile game, and in the game it offers you an opportunity to maybe gain extra game credits if you watch an ad.
Correct.
The moment you decide that you are going to watch the ad, attention is already given at that point. And because you willingly chose to go for the ad, to watch it, that will increase your inclination towards the ad, and therefore your attention for that will rise. Vis-a-vis in another situation when an ad pops out of the blue when you're watching a video. So it's factors like that that really help to drive attention. And of course, for ads that gear towards these drivers of attention, it's more likely that they will perform better.
So that's brilliant. The two things that you just spoke about, and I'm trying to make it more clear for our audience, and then let's discuss more time on those. So the attention for any message that's put out is primarily impacted by these two key things. First is the message or the creativity, and the second is the environment in which the brand message is being served, right? And I remember watching certain ads which makes us emotional, which makes us laugh, and I always realize that those cues in the brand message is what will lead us to remember that as a consumer, right?
Yes.
And when we see a lot of those across different platforms, then that's the environment in which it's being served. So keeping the right balance of what brand message are we giving, what kind of impact is it going to have, versus the environment in which the ad is being served, how complex that is, and to make sure that we get the attention. And we'll spend some time to discuss these two aspects with you, Valerie.
Right.
Talking about the right environment, and in today's time, all of us watch content or consume content across different screens. A big screen like a TV size screen, or a medium sized screen like your laptops or iPads, and the smaller ones like your mobile phone. And I think the majority of our content is being consumed on mobile phone. So the fact that a person is looking at content, and hence the ad or the brand message on any of these screens and devices also has an impact, right, on how the message is being receptive. And that has an impact on the attention and what we remember when we see those ads, right? So what, in your view, Valerie, is contributes to create this right environment in which the ad can be best received, knowing that all of us as audience or consumers are available across different devices?
Right. I think one of the things is that maybe today we can look at not just focusing on ad formats that focus on impressions and reach, broader media mix as well, to try to create ads that come across multiple touch points and also create a better user experience for the consumer. So in this way, the attention will be earned when at the right time possible and at the best place possible as well. So that's the first one. I think secondly, we can also choose formats that work best. So for example, opt-in formats, in-app formats, and even full screen formats. So these kind of formats actually reduce the amount of distractions the user has vis-a-vis other ones, which maybe could be a pop-up that on top of the pop-up, they still have other things going on that screen.
Yeah. And sometimes, as consumers, when we are watching those content or we're consuming a content, suddenly ad appears. Well, we are always, all of us are in that business of showing the brand message. And hence, from what you're saying is that those different formats and how different screens we advertise, is there a learning that we could take up? Something that we should know as advertisers or brand owners when we advertise?
I think something from that is that if the ad is engaging or interesting enough for the user to do something with it in that sense, it usually drives better performance. So people like to engage in nature and they like to engage with unique experiences. So for example, if today there is like a AR filter at the end of the ad, they're more likely to engage with it vis-a-vis it's just a normal video ad and it ends that way. Are you a gamer yourself?
Yeah, I do play games sometimes, when we get a break from our office.
Yes.
But I think that's the right thing, because when we talk about environment, is there something within these devices where we are either consuming content passively or we are actively engaging with it, right? And what you've just said about gaming, it's very interesting. So do you suggest that an environment like that or any other thing that we engage with as an audience on our devices or mobile phone, that's a better environment where we can put our ads?
I mean, you're a gamer. I'm also a gamer myself. I mean, not hardcore gaming, but I do play casual games. And, deep diving into the psyche of gamers, like you and I, and like the everyday gamer, when we play games, we are usually in a more laid-back, with a very laid-back attitude and very calm. But at the same time, we are also very engaged with the game. So that sets the stage up nicely for ads, because the mobile gaming environment innately is an environment that is made to attract attention and to keep the attention. So with the attention of the audience already heightened up, their senses already heightened up, when your ad comes in, they're more likely to engage with the ad, especially if the ad experience is good.
And then are there different ways in which I can bring my brand into the gaming environment, right? Because there could be an integration, there could be a pop-up ad. And is there something that, from the house of Digital Turbine, that you have as solutions where a brand could leverage putting their brands and get their attention?
Yes. So usually what we do is that we will of course have the ad from the client, and then after that we top it up with an additional end card. So how that works is that because already in the whole video length there would be attention in and out. It might wane a little bit, but at the end when we introduce the end card element, it brings back the attention again, because
nice.
After they watch something and then you come in with a fresh perspective of the brand again. So take for example, we recently did a really fun Christmas campaign for one of the QSR partners that we have, and what they really wanted to do was to introduce to the audience in the very busy QSR space, what are some of the new elements that they have for their Christmas selection.
All right.
So we had the ad, and then we did something really cute and fun for the end card. So we created a mini game where users can drag and drop some of the food elements that they have into like a mini serving platter. So although it was a very short interaction, but it effectively helps to bring the message across that, in the menu there is this item, there is
Very
that
nice.
item.
Very nice.
And after that the game ends and the user is back into the game again. So
nice.
Some things like that helps to drive up the engagement rates, and because of that it also helps the user retain more memory of the brand, the ad as well.
What they've interacted with the brand while they were on the game.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice.
having said that, I'm also curious to find out from, a media agency point of view, how are you guys looking at this today?
I know this question was going to come up. So, some of the things that you said in terms of environment, in terms of creativity, it's absolutely perfect, right? Mm-hmm. And from a media lens, the fact that now we've tried to find our audiences versus 5, 8, 10 years back across different devices, exactly. Right? So the journey is more complex to find that consumer, to find that audience. And some of the things where we have started to play a role harder than before is let's say increasing the frequencies in which the brand can connect with the consumers.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that we keep reaching out to the same person on the same device or platform, right? But the fact that the consumer is available on different devices, how do we make sure that the brand is appearing on these different devices? And that increases, the number of interactions that the brand has with consumer. The second is the fact that again, the advertisers or the brands are very keen today compared to in the past, that it's not just about awareness. It's not just about making the brand being remembered, which is very, very important to start with. But we want to take the journey towards the end and actually convert, right? So it's awareness, consideration, and conversion. And this journey has now become more seamless, or more complex. It's not linear anymore. So what we try to do in media is that when we connect with the consumer in upper funnel, how do we retarget them to create an engagement, like you rightly said, and then using that engagement to actually drive them to a platform where we can convert or we can, sell it. So using offers and product benefits. So this is how we are also playing a role in media to get that attention. Right. But at each stage, when a brand interacts, again, the environment, that plays a very, very important role, and the creativity itself. So we do have leverage certain environment of different inventory types or gaming itself.
Right.
Because yes, in gaming there is an active participation or engagement from the consumer, right, who's playing that game.
Yes.
And what is interesting that we have also observed is the way we land our brand messages, right, and the number of options available on something like gaming. So these are the things that we plan to do in media as well to get that attention, right? So, having learned that mobile gaming is one of the best ways in which the consumer is already engaging or playing games on the device, on the platform. So how is it compared in terms of performance versus the other formats that's available and we advertise there?
Yes. A great question. We recently did research with Amplified Intelligence to understand the attention of gamers on mobile games. Mobile video games are those that are able to capture the strongest and the most consistent attention for mobile gamers who are playing on these mobile games. So, and in addition to that, in-game advertisements are also able to hold longer attention, and that means more likely to have greater brand recall in future.
Okay, that's interesting, right? And the fact that I'm extending the conversation on creativity, moving on from the environment that we discussed. What also matters is in which format do we advertise? We have media metrics such as viewability or view through rate, which helps us let us know whether the consumer has watched the ad or engaged with the ad. And there are different formats in which, again, the brand message could have a higher impact versus, a decent way to connect with the consumers. What are some of those formats, and why don't you share more about them?
Okay. I think before I go deeply into which ad formats and the duration and all that, I wanted to share that when we are looking at attention in this study today, we actually looked at it from 3 different points of attention. So the first one is our active attention, which is where the viewer is actually looking at the ad. The second one is passive attention, where the ad is playing, the person is in the room, but might not be directly looking at the ad.
Like a big screen,
Yes. And the third one is non-attention, which means no attention.
Okay.
So the winner metric that we want to look at is really the active attention seconds that the ad is able to garner. And we tested that on our DT rewarded video inventory. So we looked across couple of durations. So we looked at 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and 30 seconds ad format. And the results were pretty consistent. And when we tested on, for example, the 15-second ad, we realized that actually 6 seconds of the entire duration was active attention seconds, and 4 seconds was the passive ones. So this means that around 40% of the ad viewed was actually made up of active attention seconds.
Nice.
And this 40% is consistent throughout the different durations. So this means that the ad, which is able to tell a story within the time frame that is given,
Correct.
would make a very effective ad.
That's great, and that's very interesting, Val, because we do have formats of advertising ranging from different duration, right?
Yes.
So there is a 6-seconder possibility to advertise through gaming inventory or any other platform available for video.
Yes.
So do you suggest that because the consumer had that attention, out of a 15-second video for 6-seconders, if you were to play only 6-seconder, they'll continue to have all of that attention? Or alternately, within a 6-seconder also, there are certain duration in which the attention is higher and the rest of the ad just passes by?
So when we look at it, the attention is usually highest at the beginning, and then it might wane a little bit. So which is why, again, having a second injection of attention is important to kind of keep the user's attention on the ad itself.
That's very interesting, because what happens today a lot of times is that the ads are made into one singular asset.
Yes.
And those assets is further designed for different formats, for different durations, right? Any example that comes to your mind from a gaming environment and the formats that advertisers use, where you have seen a brand really benefit, using the platform or using that kind of environment of gaming?
I think so. Like, now is the award season, and then we are looking at all our campaigns again, reevaluating them. One that especially caught my mind was a brand that we were working with in Indonesia.
Okay.
So the brand was really trying to communicate the product benefits of a beauty product, for example, and this time it was for men. So it's a little bit interesting in that sense, because usually beauty products are associated with female. So what we did this time was that we actually created an AR filter that was not commonly used for men, actually. So what happens is that, after viewing the ad that the brand has across, the 360 campaign, the user is led to a CTA where they are asked to, try this
products for the brand.
filter. And they were asking to say that, like, you activate it with a voice command saying 𝐄𝐏𝐈𝐒𝐁𝐈𝐒, which basically means clear the dullness, clear the skin.
Nice.
And then after that, the AR filter is kind of activated, and you can see your skin from, dull, oily and all that, immediately transform to like a perfect looking skin, and which is basically what everybody is looking for, right? When you're looking for confidence and all that. So I think interactions like that really help the brand to bring out their messaging and some of the product benefits that they want. And it's also personalized in that sense, because the consumers get to see their own face transform instead of a
Nice.
model that already has a perfect face.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I would love to try that. I haven't really seen my skin changing a lot in last few years, so AI filter possibly is the way to do it. Now I know it. Thanks, Valerie. Okay, so moving on, from the fact what you've explained to us, the different durations that we run and how consumers having an attention as parts of the entire ad and not really the overall. And I like the point that you said, where maybe there is more than one injection in trying to get that attention from the consumer, right? Maybe something that we start with to grab the attention, and something at midway of the ad or the message. And of course, towards the end, maybe there's, if it's a conversion one, have an offer and which is attractive enough for them to click, for them to land to a platform to purchase, right? What else do you want to share in terms of the way we measure this attention? Is there something specific from a digital turbines lens that we should look at?
Okay, I think when we were doing this study, we really relied on eyeball tracking mechanisms, which I think today is a luxury that not all of us have, and I think it's also something that it's evolving, the whole attention metrics, and we don't have something today that we can leverage on, something like a viewability. We don't have like a parallel of that for attention today. So I look forward to where the industry is heading towards attention metrics and how we can better help to measure the effectiveness of ads moving forward from here.
Great. And to be honest, that is something that we are challenged almost every day when we work with our clients and our brand owners, that while we continue to measure the media metrics in terms of how ad is being received or engaged with.
Yes.
And of course, the eventual truth when we do a low funnel, I feel it's slightly easier because we know what is getting converted.
Yes.
And today we do have mechanism in which we do analysis to understand what creatives or what kind of platforms have worked better to convert certain audience and to create that purchase. But I think the challenge is little severe in the upper or middle funnel because besides the media metrics, there are limited options to understand how an ad is creating impact in terms of attention, right? So are there any studies that you want to refer to or which are available today for advertisers to understand how that attention is getting or how the impact is being done by the ad in terms of attention grabbing for the consumer?
Right. I mean, firstly, we already have a huge SDK footprint across multiple games out there. So that means that we are able to have your games out in maybe the top 500 gaming apps in the industry. So that on the inventory point of view, it's covered. And secondly, we have DT Creative Labs, who is really our creative arm that looks at how we can make the ad more engaging for advertisers out there and what makes sense based on the creative, the messaging, and all that. And what they usually do, they will communicate with the client, they will understand their needs, and then before they create something as a draft for the client to view, and then we all collectively agree that that's what we want to do. So with these two elements together, we managed to have a platform that really gives us two ways of attention. And because of that, I think very very fortunately, in the study, it is also revealed that DT ads actually outperform our competitors by an average of 10 times because the ads coupled with the two waves of attention gives us around 22 seconds of attention seconds vis-a-vis maybe a mobile web video that is around 1.6 seconds or a social video that gives around 2.5 seconds. So I think everything adding it up, being in a gaming environment, having an interactive game really helps capture the attention of the audience that it will eventually lead to greater brand recall. I mean, that's it. What do you think from the media lens of how creativity can further support the future of advertising?
Great. And firstly, before I move on to saying something from media lens, I really have learned a lot today, and having to understand that both from an environment lens, what could work, what are the different formats, what are the different creative and the best practices that we could do. And for sure, we will, reach out to you for getting some of those done from the DT Creative Lab,
Definitely.
right? And to build onto that point from a media lens, right, while we continue to learn about consumers better, to learn more about what devices, what platforms are they engaging more on, and use that to reach out to them and make our brands visible to them, right? The other aspect where there is a lot of discussion happening today in the industry is the agility with which the brand message needs to be changed because of this complex multi-screen environment, and trying to create a message which suits the vertical format, horizontal format on different devices, right? And the need to have different creatives adopted for different funnels, from upper funnel to all the way to lower funnel, right? And I feel that what we have also been lately exploring is the use of AI, and we are all talking about artificial intelligence and the way it can possibly make our lives easier and faster. And we do see that there is a role that AI can play in bringing this agility of creating assets, creating messages, right? From using, of course, the base asset that is designed by the brand. And that is where we could then put out those messages onto different platforms, onto different formats, and actually get that attention. Right? So, and what do you think? Is AI really the future? And do you think that's going to play a role in the way Digital Turbine is bringing its services and solutions to advertisers?
I think today we are in a very experimental phase of using AI, but we have done some stuff with AI which was pretty interesting. So recently, I think what Creative Labs has done with AI is that they have used it to see whether or not it helps with the resourcing and then also the time taken for them to create an ad, because with AI they are able to search for for example images faster, they're able to change the background with a drop of a hat, etc., as compared to back in the days where it has to be manually rebuilt again. So I think that speeds up the efficiency of the creation process.
Great. Great. So it was lovely having you, Valerie, today, and it was a great conversation, at this MMA Talk Hub series. Look forward to chatting with you again.
Yes.